Ladies and gentlemen, what if I told you that a single phone call, just a few seconds of sound traveling through a wire, was enough to expose a crime buried for decades? Not a confession in a courtroom. Not a dramatic arrest on television. Just a voice on the line. Calm, familiar, and fatally revealing. For decades, the case had been considered closed, a cold file gathering dust on the shelves of a police archive. Investigators had long since exhausted leads, witnesses had moved on or passed away, and the suspects had either evaded justice or been absolved by circumstance. To the outside world, the crime was nothing more than a memory, a whispered tale in small communities, a headline in an old newspaper, a shadow in the collective consciousness of those who had lived through the era. Yet, hidden beneath the surface of forgotten files and fading memories, the truth had never truly disappeared. It simply waited, silent and patient, for a spark to awaken it. That spark came in the form of a phone call, a single, seemingly ordinary conversation that would change everything. The call was unexpected, coming at a time when no one involved had reason to anticipate it. It arrived like a ripple across calm waters, disturbing the surface and revealing the undercurrent that had been quietly flowing beneath for decades. From the first words spoken, the call carried the weight of unspoken truths. There was no introduction, no preamble, just a voice, familiar enough to catch attention but laced with hesitation, guilt, and the tremor of someone holding secrets for far too long. What made it remarkable was not the content of the call alone, but the context. It reopened a case that no one thought could ever be reopened, a mystery that the passage of time had seemed to render unsolvable. Every word, every pause, every subtle inflection of the voice carried significance. The speaker did not intend to confess, yet the details they revealed, perhaps accidentally, perhaps subconsciously, created cracks in the carefully constructed facade of lies. Time, which had been the ally of deception, suddenly became the enemy. The decades of silence that had protected the perpetrators were rendered useless by a few carefully chosen, or inadvertently revealed, phrases. Investigators knew that in cold cases, it is often not the dramatic confession that solves a crime, but the accumulation of small, overlooked details. And in this phone call, the smallest of details, the way someone hesitated, a slight misstatement about a date, a name used incorrectly, was enough to ignite a firestorm of renewed investigation. The psychological impact of that moment cannot be overstated. Imagine being a detective who had long given up hope of closure. You had pieced together the case as best you could with the resources and evidence available, but the trail had grown cold, the witnesses unreliable, the leads exhausted. Then, out of the blue, a voice arrives, seemingly from nowhere, reviving old suspicions and prompting questions that had lain dormant for decades. Suddenly, every prior assumption, every tentative conclusion, is questioned. The phone call becomes a key, unlocking doors that had been sealed by time. It exposes the fragility of human memory, the unreliability of long-held truths, and the profound way that a single spark, a single unexpected event, can reignite a pursuit thought long over. Moreover, the call demonstrates how chance and timing intersect in the resolution of crime. Decades of investigation had failed to uncover the critical piece of the puzzle, yet the universe, or fate, chose a moment when someone's voice, unguarded or accidental, carried the answer forward. It emphasizes a chilling reality about crimes buried in the past. No secret is ever completely safe, and even the smallest ripple in the stream of life can bring the truth to the surface. The crime, long considered resolved by absence and forgetfulness, now demanded attention once more. The phone call did not merely reopen an investigation, it reopened history itself, forcing both victims and perpetrators, witnesses and investigators, to confront a reality they had hoped would remain buried forever. In essence, that single phone call serves as a powerful reminder that time alone cannot erase wrongdoing. Decades may pass, memories may fade, and files may gather dust, but truth has a way of surfacing, often when least expected. And in the quiet of a few words spoken over a line, a crime believed to be lost to history is suddenly alive again, pulling everyone involved back into the shadows, into the tension, and into the pursuit of justice that had once seemed impossible. Once that phone call pierced the decades-long silence, it was as if a hidden thread had been tugged, slowly unraveling a tightly wound knot of deception and secrecy. The second truth in this story revolves around the meticulous unraveling of a web that had been carefully spun for years. In cold cases, it is rarely a single piece of evidence that cracks a case open. Rather, it is the accumulation of small, overlooked inconsistencies, the hidden connections between people, places, and events that were dismissed or ignored in the past. This phone call became the catalyst for that process, reactivating the dormant investigation and forcing detectives to look at every detail with fresh eyes, understanding that time had changed nothing in the criminal mind. The mistakes, the slips, and the concealed motives still existed, waiting to be discovered. The irony of this situation is striking. The perpetrator believed that time had erased the risk, that decades of silence had buried the crime beneath layers of forgetfulness and misdirection. They assumed that witnesses had moved on, that evidence had deteriorated, that memory had faded into irrelevance. Yet, the phone call shattered all of those assumptions in an instant. Human behavior, especially when guilt is involved, is rarely perfect or controlled. Even after years, the tiniest inconsistencies in speech, hesitation in tone, or the casual mention of a long-forgotten detail can reveal truths the speaker never intended to disclose. In this case, the voice on the line, whether out of fear, conscience, or accident, contained the seeds of revelation. The detectives knew that these subtle cues, when pieced together, could reconstruct the chain of events that had been obscured for decades. What made this case particularly fascinating from a criminal investigation standpoint was the role of intuition, experience, and pattern recognition. In crime analysis, investigators are trained to detect anomalies, moments that deviate from expected behavior, signals that something is amiss. The phone call offered exactly that, a pattern of speech, references, and unintentional admissions that could only make sense when viewed alongside other long-forgotten facts. Detectives revisited old witness statements, cross-referenced them with the tiniest archival details, and began to see connections that had once appeared insignificant. Perhaps a name mentioned casually did not match the official timeline, or a recollection contradicted an earlier testimony. These small discrepancies, seemingly minor on their own, formed the backbone of a puzzle that had remained unsolved for years. The brilliance of this moment was that it illustrated how even the most carefully concealed crimes leave traces, waiting for a moment of human error, or a phone call, to expose them. The second keynote also highlights the psychological dimension of reopening a decades-old case. For detectives, the resurgence of this investigation was both exhilarating and terrifying. Decades of human lives, decisions, and altered circumstances suddenly collided with the present moment. Friends, family, and witnesses had aged, moved, or passed away. Memories had become clouded, and yet, within this tangle of time and uncertainty, there was clarity emerging. The call acted as a lens, sharpening focus and revealing the hidden network of relationships, interactions, and choices that had contributed to the crime and its concealment. Each conversation, every recalled detail, every subtle observation became a breadcrumb leading investigators closer to the truth. It was a painstaking process, requiring patience, analysis, and a deep understanding of human behavior, a hallmark of all great crime investigations, a chilling reality about justice and human nature. No matter how long a crime remains hidden, it can be exposed. Even decades later, with memories imperfect and witnesses scattered, the combination of a single spark, a phone call in this case, and relentless investigative work can bring buried truths to light. This story demonstrates the intricate dance between time, human error, and investigative persistence. Every forgotten fact, every overlooked connection, every minor slip eventually builds into an undeniable narrative, ensuring that a crime cannot remain buried forever. The phone call did not just reopen an investigation, it reignited a pursuit of justice, forcing both perpetrators and those who had turned a blind eye to confront the consequences of actions that were long thought forgotten. The third truth in this chilling tale revolves around the moment when the investigation begins to converge, when fragmented clues, buried memories, and subtle inconsistencies start to form a coherent narrative that points directly to the perpetrator. In traditional crime stories, this is often the pivotal moment. The detective experiences a flash of insight, a pattern suddenly emerges, and the case moves from a tangle of speculation to a focused pursuit of truth. In this story, however, the extraordinary aspect lies in the decades-long delay between the crime and the discovery, and the way that singular phone call ignites a cascade of revelations. The fragments of the past, once isolated and overlooked, suddenly resonate with clarity, as if the passage of time had merely been a buffer waiting for the right spark to bring everything to light. What had been ignored, forgotten, or deliberately concealed now demanded attention. This keynote emphasizes the painstaking process of piecing together decades-old events. Time, which many assume erodes evidence, can also have a paradoxical effect. It forces investigators to reconsider every detail, to scrutinize even the smallest anomalies. A casual reference in an old diary, a mismatched statement in a faded newspaper article, or a long-forgotten interaction becomes a critical clue when placed in the right context. The detectives, guided by instinct honed through years of experience, begin to reconstruct the chain of events with meticulous care. They follow a path that the original investigation missed, one that requires connecting subtle dots that span decades, often relying on intuition as much as documented facts. Each discovery, no matter how small, contributes to a growing tension. The closer they get to uncovering the truth, the more inevitable the exposure of the crime becomes, and the more fragile the carefully constructed deception of the perpetrator proves to be. Psychologically, this phase of the story is fascinating. The perpetrators, confident in their concealment, continue to live their lives, believing that time has rendered them untouchable. They fail to recognize that memory, human behavior, and chance interactions are unpredictable. Each person involved in the crime carries remnants of the past, slips of speech, lingering guilt, or inadvertent admissions, that, when interpreted correctly, serve as the threads leading back to the original act. The phone call acts as a prism, refracting the darkness of decades into fragments of light that investigators can follow. In crime narratives, this is where suspense intensifies. The audience knows that the perpetrator's carefully laid plans are vulnerable, and every detail uncovered increases the tension. The narrative becomes a battle between the deliberate concealment of the past and the relentless pursuit of truth. The third keynote also highlights the meticulous interplay between environment and memory. In crime studies, the spaces where events occurred are often repositories of forgotten details, objects, locations, and interactions all hold evidence waiting to be interpreted. Investigators revisiting these places discover that decades do not erase significance. A chair in a parlor, a tree in a backyard, a room left untouched, all become vital witnesses to the story. The investigation treats these environments as silent allies, and each discovery within them provides a connection that was previously obscured by time. In many ways, the past reaches forward, compelling recognition and demanding answers, the inexorable nature of justice and the tension of inevitability. In crime stories, there is a unique thrill in witnessing the unraveling of a long-concealed secret. The perpetrator may believe themselves safe, the case cold, and the world oblivious, yet the alignment of evidence, intuition, and timing ensures that truth has a way of emerging. In this story, the slow accumulation of knowledge, the synthesis of old testimonies, overlooked details, and the resonating impact of that one phone call, builds toward a moment of reckoning. The suspense lies not in what might happen, but in the certainty that what is buried will not remain hidden. The third keynote captures this dramatic convergence, showing that even after decades, the relentless pursuit of justice, fueled by human insight and the persistence of truth, cannot be denied. The fourth truth in this gripping tale focuses on the aftermath, the far-reaching consequences that ripple out once a crime, buried for decades, is finally exposed. In most traditional investigations, once a case is solved, there is closure, the perpetrator is brought to justice, and the community can begin the slow process of healing. But in this story, the revelation triggered by a single phone call does more than just solve a crime. It awakens a cascade of moral, psychological, and societal consequences that extend far beyond the immediate act. Every person connected to the case, whether through complicity, silence, or mere proximity, is forced to confront uncomfortable truths. Old alliances, long-forgotten betrayals, and hidden secrets suddenly resurface, illustrating that crimes rarely exist in isolation. They leave marks that endure in ways both visible and invisible. One of the most striking aspects of the aftermath is the psychological weight placed on those who were involved. Perpetrators, once confident that the passage of time had erased all risk, are suddenly confronted with evidence and insights that strip away the illusion of safety. They must navigate not only the legal consequences but also the internal reckoning that accompanies exposure. Guilt, regret, and fear intertwine, creating a psychological pressure cooker that often drives behavior as powerfully as law enforcement. In crime narratives, this is where the story truly deepens. The tension is no longer just about discovering the truth, but about observing how human beings respond when the darkness they thought they had buried resurfaces. Witnesses who once chose inaction are forced to relive memories and confront the moral compromises they made, whether intentional or accidental. The exposure of decades-old crimes becomes a lens through which human morality, weakness, and courage are magnified. The aftermath also reveals the broader societal implications. Families, friends, and entire communities are affected by the resurfacing of a crime long thought dormant. Relationships are tested, trust is fractured, and long-standing assumptions are challenged. In many ways, the phone call acts as a catalyst, not only for solving the crime itself but also for illuminating the human consequences that have been simmering unnoticed. People who were innocent by association may find themselves implicated in ways they never imagined. In crime stories, this exploration of collateral impact is crucial. It demonstrates that the reverberations of a single criminal act can persist for generations, shaping lives and altering the course of communities. Another critical component of this keynote is the interplay between justice and accountability. Legal closure is only one facet of the story. True resolution involves recognition, confrontation, and often moral reckoning. Those who concealed information, intentionally or inadvertently, are forced to face the reality of their actions. Communities must grapple with the uncomfortable truth that silence, indifference, or complacency can enable wrongdoing. Crime narratives often emphasize this, showing that justice is not merely a matter of punishment but of revelation, acknowledgement, and restoration. In this story, the phone call acts as the fulcrum, shifting the balance from secrecy to exposure and ensuring that no deception, however well hidden, remains permanent. The enduring nature of truth. Even when a crime is concealed for decades, human curiosity, persistence, and the unexpected spark of a phone call can set in motion a chain of events that brings light to darkness. The narrative emphasizes that time alone does not erase accountability, it merely delays the inevitable. In crime stories, this creates a unique form of suspense. As we reach the end of this chilling tale, one truth becomes undeniable: no crime, no matter how carefully hidden or buried for decades, can remain concealed forever. From the first spark of a mysterious phone call to the painstaking uncovering of long-forgotten evidence, we have seen how persistence, attention to detail, human intuition, and the inexorable passage of truth combine to expose even the darkest secrets. This story reminds us that crimes leave traces, not just in objects, conversations, or locations, but in the lives and minds of everyone they touch. The victim, the witnesses, the perpetrators, and the community all become part of a complex web of consequences, showing that every action, every choice, and every silence carries weight far beyond the immediate moment. In the end, this story is more than a crime, it is a testament to the persistence of justice, the fragility of secrecy, and the enduring consequences of human actions. It forces us to confront the uncomfortable reality that wrongdoing cannot stay hidden indefinitely, that even decades of silence cannot bury the echoes of a crime, and that the truth, once awakened, moves swiftly and without mercy. And so, the lesson is clear: no matter how deeply a crime is buried, the phone will eventually ring, the truth will eventually surface, and justice, patient and relentless, will finally be served.